What's up, guys? Welcome back to Woody's Power Barn. We're diving back into the old H here. I got my overhaul kit. I got all the parts for it. So I think the next step we're going to do, we're going to get these head studs out of here. I want to run taps in the block, and I want to also tap the threads on the studs themselves. Clean the deck up, get this side plate off. You can't see it. The side plate off for the coolant passages inside the block. I want to get that off, blow the block out, clean it out. I got some brake clean. We'll Scotch Brite this top of the deck here, and hopefully go underneath and pull the main bearings down, roll the new ones in, get those all together. If I have time, I'd even really like to get the liners and the pistons all in. So let me show you guys the overhaul kit, and I'll see what we're working with, and then we'll get to work. All right, here's all of our parts. I got them all laid out here so we can see them a little better. This everything came in 3 boxes. They do that so it ships faster, whatever. I don't know. We have some main bearings for the crankshaft. Reliance. I'm not going to tell you guys all the part numbers. Just go to yesterdaystractors.com and it's super easy. Use our search engine. You just order this whole kit and they ship it to you. They're not IH specific brand parts. They're aftermarket, but they're just as good. In this box we have our rod bearings, and then we also have these. This is our wrist pin bushing that goes in the connecting rod. These, I believe you need to press these in and have them reamed to fit, and we're going to measure the other ones. If they're good, we're not going to bother with these, so we don't have to take it to a machine shop, because I do not have the tools to ream this out with. We got valve guides in here. All new valve springs, new valves, keepers, blah blah. And then we have our piston rings in this box. New pistons. They are standard bore, so flat tops. So we're not going to be using this thing to pull with. Dang it. Liners. Brand new, dry sleeve. I might go set these outside so they cool down and then they can shrink up and we can just slip them right in the block. Don't have to beat on them. Then we have our full gasket kit. They literally have every gasket you could ever need for the entire engine here, including a front and rear main seal. That's pretty cool. So, I think we'll get started. We'll get these studs out and start cleaning on this. So before we start cleaning this top deck surface up, one thing you always want to make sure to do is on your crankshaft journals where the connecting rod bolts to, just take a rag and fold it like that and wrap it around that journal and wrap it up with some tape. I'm just going to use electrical tape for now. The crankshafts have their drilled oil passages, and when you're scraping up here, you don't want to be dropping all that nice, gook and gunk and crap onto those journals and getting dirt in those oil holes. All that's going to do is ruin your brand new bearings and potentially lock up the engine. Not good. So I'm going to go down and do that, and then we'll start up here. So now I got the crankshaft all wrapped up. We're going to get these studs out. Typically, people would probably put a pipe wrench on them and spin them out. I'm not a fan of doing that. The head has to slide over these. You don't want to be putting big grooves in them, and then you got to either emery them down, or if you don't, and you have a hell of a time trying to get the head on. So I have this set. It's their Matco stud removers and installers. I bought them from Matco. They're different sizes. They come in a small little kit, and there's three little. That's 4. There's 3 little roller bearings in there that when you turn them, they kind of squeeze down and they grab on the outside of the stud, and then you can spin them out that way. So the nice part about them, they have a hex head on the end, so you can just slide it down. Then you're not on the threads, you're on the lower shank of the stud. And as you go to loosen, they grab. Pull it out for you. So these are a really handy tool, especially for doing this. I'm pulling these studs out, like I said, so I can tap the block, and it makes it way easier to clean everything up. So let me get these out, and you guys watch the process, and we'll start cleaning her up. So now that we got all the studs out, we have a nice surface to work with here. We'll go ahead, I'll take my carbide super duper scraper, get her waxed out, and then scotch braid it up with some solvent. Okay, so we got the top of the deck cleaned up. All I have left to do is get all the bolt holes tapped out. But yeah, cleaned up nice. You can see there's a C stamped in front of every liner bore. I don't know exactly what that means. If you do, drop it down in the comment box and let me know. The good news is you can still see original mill marks. Do not use one of those little roll-lock cookie discs on a machined mating surface like a head or a block, things like that. Don't use those. Just use a wire brush, Scotch-Brite, a scraper. Put some manual labor in it. It's a labor of love, I promise. So let's get these head bolt holes tapped. Bolts are tapped and I got this little side cover off. Exhibit A, why you don't put water in your cooling systems. Not only does it freeze, it rusts. So, glad we got this off. I'll get as much, I won't be able to get much of this out because I don't want too much of it to, fall down in the block where I can't really get it. The block is draining. You can see that goop dripping out of there. But I'll get out what I can, and I think we're just going to flush this thing 2-3 times with some straight water and then put good coolant in it, and I think that should take most of it. I think the water pump will chew up any big pieces of rust and we'll be good from there. Man's best friend. So we're going to wash everything down some brake clean, blow it off with the air gun. I'm going to spray in here with brake clean and pick some of them chunks out. The main thing that you want to do is take the handy dandy straw malator thing and get down in there so you can spray around the main bearing. All this stuff is sitting around there. When you roll your new ones in, you don't want to just pile them up with all that garbage. And you spray this on there. The dirt's not going to get behind them because they're still together, but you want to make sure that you can spray around them and wash all that dirt down. I got a pan underneath, so spray her down, get all these bolt holes sprayed out. I usually cover them up with a rag and blow them with the gun. So I got the camera pushed back because I don't want it to get full of brake clean and dirt. So the picture's not as great, but I'll make more videos if I have a camera longer. Now that everything's all washed down, we can put our main bearings in. This is the main cap. So on this engine, you're going to have three main caps: rear, front, and the middle. You don't want to just rip them all off at the same time, because then your crankshaft's going to fall down and it's going to hang on the front and rear main seals, and then they're going to be junk. And then you got to put those in. So typical rule of thumb, I typically start on the middle, like on a Caterpillar 6-cylinder 3406 engine. You have 7 main caps. I would pull numbers 2 through 6, change those, and then do 1 and 7 on the end, so the crankshaft's always supported. So on this one, we'll start on number 2, the middle one, and I already had this off, but you can see there is a hole in the bolt. They keep these tight with wire, so you got to cut the wire. I had this off previously to check the main cap to make sure that it's all standard size cranks, so I can order the right bearings. So there's our main cap. And this middle one, the bearing's different than the other ones. It has these sides on it. That's called your thrust bearing. That's what the back and forth play of the crankshaft. This bearing is what sets those tolerances. So you have to have some end play, but too much is bad. None is even worse. So that's this bearing's job. So we'll roll the upper one out. My preferred way to roll the bearings out is I have a screwdriver, a very long-handled one, and I blunted the tip of it. It's not a sharp screwdriver, it's a rounded edge. I'd really like to use a brass punch, but I don't have quite enough room in here for that. So our bearing tab is on this side of the crankshaft. So we're going to push this side and roll it out and around. Now ideally, you'd have a heel bar, and you can just come in here and hook onto that and roll them out. But I forgot to get mine. So we're going to struggle it out See if we can get it to roll. Nope. There. So there's our upper bearing. So we got our new bearings. We're going to roll the top one in. Some guys use that Lucas oil goop, really thick stuff. I prefer, I just take my oil can, I got some 80/90, good thick heavy gear lube. You know, I think that's all you need. And before I start them, I always unplug the coil wire and crank on them until they build some oil pressure and get oil everywhere, and I never had a problem yet. So should go knock on wood. So I just grease her up real good, make sure you get the sides for the thrust. Then before you install it, remember, we got to keep everything clean here. No messes, no dirt. These are main bearings. You do not want oil on the back of the bearing. So wipe that oil off. A little isn't going to hurt, but don't oil the back side of the bearing. That's how your tolerances get way too tight and you smoke an engine. So we have that. I already wiped this off. There is a slight groove. You can see that discoloration. That's from that oil groove in the center. Sometimes worn there, that's why that looks like that, but there is just a slight groove in there. I'm not too worried about it. I can just barely catch it with my fingernail. I think it'll be just fine. So I got that wiped down, bearings oiled up. Now when I install these, I use my same screwdriver, but I take the end of a rag and wrap it around the tip. Kind of softens that up. These bearings are ridiculously soft. You can scratch them with your fingernail and actually put a pretty good groove in them. Just like that. And the tabs, these bearing tabs, those aren't to hold the bearing in place. Those are dummy tabs, so dummies can't put the bearings in backwards. What holds the bearings in place is the bearing squeeze from torquing up the main cap. Speaking of main caps, here's ours. I got it cleaned up. Get your new bearing in there. Oil it up and put it in. These are main cap bolts. We're just going to go ahead and put some of that oil on the threads underneath the heads of the bolt and the washer, like so. Always make sure your cap is facing the right way. On this particular model, the bearing tabs are both on the same side of the crank. Usually they all are. And if you don't know, take pictures. Don't guess. That's not something you really should be guessing on. Alright. And on that, they want 75 foot-pounds. Torque them up evenly with each other. Don't run one all the way up. There we go. Then we'll run our wire through the bolts to lock them in, if it even does anything. And that's done. Okay guys, we got all the main bearings put in. So I gathered up a bunch of parts and I brought them here to my place of work so I can clean everything up. I have a solvent tank here, a bead blasting cabinet. I'd really like to get these all the rods and pistons disassembled and measure that bushing to make sure we're good. We have our new pistons, new rings. We'll clean all the rods up. As scuzzy as this thing was, we'll throw that in the blast cabinet, bead blast that all up, make it all real nice and pretty. Same thing with the oil pan. Plus that has a big dent on the bottom side that we'll straighten out. And I have my wonderful girlfriend here helping me clean all these piston liners up. When they shipped these, they kind of had this glue on them. I'm assuming they had some sort of spray glue on the oil paper that they were shipped in. So we got to get all that cleaned up before we put those in. So I'll set you guys up on the tripod and we'll get to work. We got our rod all apart. So we're going to go ahead and measure this. It's a little bit of math involved. So if you're scared of math, go to college. So, in the manual here, it tells me that the piston pin diameter spec is 1.1089 inches to 1.1092 inches. So I have my 1 to 2 inch micrometer. We're going to mic this out. And I'm getting about 1.109 on the micrometer. So, take our handy dandy notebook and we write that down. 1.109. And then there's a spec in here for piston pin clearance and rod bushing. On the Series H, we have 1 to 3 thousandths of an inch of clearance. So we take our little, I don't know exactly what are these called? Telescoping gauges. T's. The best way to do these, get on a flat surface and you spring them out because these go in and out. I'm sure a lot of you have already seen these. And then you put it in the piston at an angle, tighten it up, and then you just kind of do a rocking motion. And that's our spec. You put it in there at an angle, and then those are going to be spread, and then you just kind of rock it out. That way it'll be good. It'll get the max measurement from that in that curve. So we have that measurement. We're going to take our mic again, and we'll mic that. And that's giving me a 1.111 inches. So we'll write that down on our notebook. 1.111. And the difference between those is 2/1000ths for all you great people at math. So, being that's 2/1000ths, that's within our spec. So I think we'll be perfectly fine reusing this rod with this piston pin bushing in here. I'm going to double check all the rest of the pistons to be sure that that's consistent through all of them. If one of them's bad, then I'm going to have them all redone. But if they're all good, I'm not going to change them. They're all in spec. We should be good to go. So we'll go ahead, get all the rest of them disassembled and cleaned up. Got everything cleaned up. Now we're ready to get our piston rod put back together. If you're hearing any scratchy background noise, my girlfriend's cleaning a bunch of parts up for me, so I don't have to. So I'm just going to put the rings on the piston first, and then put the piston head assembled on the rod. So we have our rings. They come in this nice bag, and they actually come labeled on which rings to put on first and where each ring in each section goes. So we're going to start with the oil control ring. And like I was saying before, don't overstretch them when you're putting them on. Just ease them onto the piston head and you'll be fine. Our second ring, well, third ring down. So there's all of our rings on our piston. Pretty like. So we can go ahead and get it assembled onto our rod. These pistons are not directional. There is no forwards or backwards to them. So it doesn't matter which way we go put it on the rod. Again, I just use good, thick 80-90 gear lube on all these parts to put them together. New retaining clips to go on. There we go. That's one piston ready to be dropped in. So all the pistons are put together. Sorry about the background noise. There's a heater running and we're washing parts away in the solvent tank. But anyway, the pistons are all together. So I'm gonna start getting this head disassembled. I'm not gonna be putting the new valves in yet because I already pulled one out, and I'll show you how I take a couple out first, and then I'll show you the insides of them. And this is gonna have to be ground regardless for the new valves, springs, guides, and the seats where the valve meets the head. That's gonna have to be ground because it's pretty wore out. So let's get a couple of these valves out of here quick. Obviously, just like the push rods, my preferred method is I just found a box that I can put a hole in and shove the valve through. See there? Then when I close it, keeps everything in line. I don't have to do this because I'm getting all new keepers, springs, and valves, but if I want a reference to go back to see, you know, which one looked the worst or anything like that, I have this to go off of. But anyway, here's our valve spring compressor. I got it all adjusted up. It's pretty simple, really. You put the tip of it on here, and it's basically just a big C-clamp. There's a handle on the end, and when you spread it, you can get on the valve, and then you compress it, pull the two keepers off, let it loose, and then you can pull it all apart. So we get that on here. I go a little bit tighter on that. These are our keepers. Those are what keeps the spring onto the valve stem. Let that off. There you go. One perfectly good valve. So we got all the valves out. As you can see, it's also nap time. And looking in here, I know it's dark, yep, I know. You can see the amount of carbon that's built up inside of the exhaust. This is an intake port right here, and it's not so bad, but I mean, look at the difference. I mean, we'll clean this up, it's gonna flow so much better. I chipped away at this one a little bit, and it's pretty rock solid hard in there. They're about all like that. And the reason I know they need ground is you can see, if I can get my light right, how wide that sealing surface for the valve is. That should be a real narrow band, and it's about as wide as the valve itself. If you look at the bottom of these valves, you can see how they're real wide on a, you know, it's almost the entire length of the valve. Come on, focus. Oh, there we go. And you can also kind of see that edge, how it's worn in. Shouldn't be like that at all. So, nothing that we can't fix. We'll get this thing ground up, get some new valves in it, and bolt it on. So right now, we got all the old guides out. We're gonna get all the new ones pressed in with the help of my dad. Gonna help me out today. Here's our tool to press them in with. We'll just press them in, and that's the depth that we need. I made a little tool up to press. Now we just got to get the head, get one side blocked up so these are level, so when we press them in, we're pressing straight down because the valves are in at an angle. Then we're getting the valve grinder all set up so we can get some valves did. All right, here we go. That's what we want our valve seat to look like after we lap them in. Real nice around the Alright, so we got all the valves ground, and the way we kind of did that is we have our different stones. So this is a 45-degree stone that we shaped because the book wants a 45-degree angle for the valves to seat on. So we shaped that. Then we have a narrower stone to take a little bit of material off the back of that seat that we ground in, and then a wider stone to take some off the front. So after we do that, you end up with a seat that looks like that. Then we go ahead and lap our valves in so we can check where we're at. Then we make small adjustments as we need, and then relap and grind a little bit off, take more off the front or the back side, depending on what we need. And now we're going to go ahead, get this head all cleaned up, get the valves in it, and then we should have the head ready to get put back on. Thanks, Dad.
You're welcome.
Well, guys, I think I have enough footage here to put together one full video. We got all the pistons cleaned up, all the liners are cleaned up, all the parts are cleaned up. All we have to do now is start putting parts in and tightening bolts up. So I think I'm gonna call this video good right here, but keep watching. I think the next video we're gonna make some smoke on this thing. So stay tuned, and thanks for hanging out with me. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. You know, let me know what you like and what you don't like. I appreciate that. It helps me out and helps me make better content for everybody out there that watches these. So, again, thanks a million, guys, and we'll see you next time.